Hey, I'm Brent Hall, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Pulse by Alpine Labs.
I'm going to use the drift method. Freaking incredible. Round F16 for that to get that sunburst.
All right, so what is this thing? I think primarily most people are going to be using this and thinking of it as an intervalometer, and that's definitely my main goal here. And what would you use an intervalometer for? Well, my favorite thing ever, time lapses. So aside from time lapses, this thing's got a bunch of other features that I want to talk about. I'm going to go over a lot of the things that I use the most and some of the things that I think, there's nothing really that I dislike about this, but I am going to talk about some things that I wish could be improved or that I'd like to see in maybe future firmware updates. Everything that I wish could be a little bit better, I think, is all software stuff. So it's stuff that could be implemented in further updates. But let's start off with the basic features and what I love most about this. All right, so first, how does this thing work? Well, it's Bluetooth, and it will talk to your phone via Bluetooth, and it will talk to your camera via one of these. And depending on when you buy this thing, you have to pick which cord you want based on which camera you have. So if you have a couple different cameras, you might want to invest in a couple different cords. So I've had this thing for about 8-9 months now, and I've used it all over the place in all my travels. If you've seen my channel before, if you've seen any of my vlogs from the past like 6 months or whatever, there's a good chance you've seen this in there because I've used it for pretty much every time lapse I've done in the last 9 months. So in addition to just time lapse, this thing has a couple of other really cool features that I like a lot. The first one, and the one I use the most, is definitely the bulb mode, and basically this is long exposure mode. And I like how using the app you can control all the settings of your camera from the app. And you can put this in bulb mode, and then you can do really long exposures of like the night sky, the stars, super long daytime exposures if you've got like a 10 or 15 stop ND filter. So all of those are really great. I'm talking like, you know, minute, 10 minutes, an hour and a half long. So here's a couple of shots that I did that are some star trails that are, one of them was like 15 minutes long and the other one was like an hour and a half long, and both of them were done with the Pulse, and that's a really handy setting that I enjoy because the only other way to do that is by having a regular intervalometer or by holding the bulb button down for as long as you want to shoot for, and that's no bueno. The other way to do the star trails to get the whole ish thing is to do the time lapse and then blend all the images together in Photoshop later. So I really like having the bulb mode and the long exposure mode on the Pulse. Another thing that I really like about the Pulse is its HDR mode, and of course you could do HDR in the camera by doing your exposure bracketing and all that stuff, or by doing manual, but what I like about this is it goes all the way up to, I think, 15 stops, or 15 shots. So you can do it all the way up to 15 shot increments. More than 7 or 9 is pretty cool, because I know that like this camera and, you know, most of my cameras, I think they top out at 7 in camera. So that's kind of handy being able to do more than 7 bracketed exposures. The only downside of that is that you can only change them in plus or minus 1 EV, so plus or minus 1 stop at a time. You can't change them in plus or minus 1/3 or 2/3 of a stop, only 1 stop or more. So single stop increments. Another thing that this does, and I'll go ahead and talk about a negative real quick for me, is it says it does video, but every time that I've tried to do the video with 4 different cameras that I have, it has crashed them. So it's given me an error 40 or an error 60. I'll show that to you here in just a second. So I don't do video with this yet. Maybe there's an update for that coming. Maybe it's my particular cameras. I don't know what's going on, but I'm pretty sure it could be fixed with a software update. All right, so rather than just sit here and talk about all of the features and all that stuff, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into the app and show you guys what the app looks like, and so you can get a feel for how it looks and how it functions, and then you can also see the features and all that stuff that I'm talking about. So let's jump into the app. All right, so let's get into the app here. Make sure your Bluetooth is turned on. Then once you open it up and you turn your pulse on, you'll see that it says My Pulse, and then give it a second and it should register your camera there. So 1DX Mark II. All right, so I like the layout. Right here, you can see this is the square. It gives you the thumbnail if you turn it on or if you turn it off. So if I just take a picture there with the pulse, then it should generate, and that is horribly not exposed properly, but you get the idea. So I also like that you can tap for the histogram. However, I wish you could I wish there was a way to put the histogram down here to where you could see it more, and not just after the fact. That way it would help a little more when you're composing your shots, because as of right now, basically the best way to do it is to compose your shots in the camera. And then so you click on that to get back to it. So this isn't gonna really be a tutorial on how to use this as much. I mean, I guess it could be, but so let's go up here. This is cool. This is where all the camera stuff is, and I really like how you can just drag this and change everything super quickly. So let's talk about the time lapse, since that's what I think most people are going to use it for. Here you can set your intervals and tell it how long between each shot, and the duration. So I really like this. So you can say, I only want it to go for 15 minutes. Then down here, it'll show you, well, if you, with these settings, 3 seconds at 15-minute duration, you're looking at 300 images, and the total elapsed time for the time lapse will be 13 seconds. So that's really cool. And then if you change that, it'll change in real time. You see now it's up to 900 if I do it every second. So I like to keep it on 3 for most of my daytime lapses of clouds and stuff like that, unless they're moving really fast or unless I'm doing night stuff. Okay, so here's the long exposure. I can put it in bulb. You have to make sure you change your camera mode to bulb, which I will do now. Bulb, so now it's in bulb. There we go, so now we're all synced. So now if I want to do a 15-minute shot, then it's all ready, and you just click that and there it goes. So it'll show you the elapsed time, and right now it's actually taking a picture, which isn't going to look pretty. So that's the long exposure mode, and like I said, you can get really cool shots of the night star trails and all that other good stuff. So let's talk about the HDR real quick. So this is what I was talking about here. You can see the number, and you can up that all the way to 15 and drop it down all the way to 3. And then you have your EV and stops. So you can go all the way up to 7 and all the way down to 1. I would definitely, for most of the stuff, I would just keep it at 1. So let me show you what it does when I try the video. So we'll go into video, and then make sure your camera is in video mode, and I'll put that back here. So I'm in video mode now, you can see that, and I'll hit record, and bam. You see that? So there's my flashy error message that I'm getting, error 70. And unfortunately, the only way to deal with that is to turn the camera off and pull the battery. All right, so that was just kind of a quick overview of what the interface, the app interface looks like, and the couple of features that I use the most on it. Let's talk about a couple of other things real quick that are kind of need to know about this thing. And one of them is, so this is Bluetooth, right? So you can control it via your app, which is great for if you want to do like a selfie, like an environmental selfie, you know, you want to go stand in front of something like way away. This thing has like I think it's 150 or 300 foot range, I think, whatever the Bluetooth range is. So that's really cool. The downside is that, and this has happened to me a couple of times, well, it's like a catch-22 thing. It's a double-edged sword here. So the cool thing is when you're doing a time lapse, you don't need to have your phone like right there. You don't need to have it attached to the camera, nothing. So you can be, you know, if you can be doing other things on your phone, which is really great, and it'll show you the progress of the time lapse as long as you're in range. and as long as you haven't exited the app. No, I'm pretty sure if you exit the app and then you come back into it, but you're still in range, you've never walked out of range, then it'll just open right back up and you'll see the elapsed time and all that, the progress of the time lapse. However, if you walk out of range, the good thing is it'll still keep shooting, and I love that. I think that's fantastic, because if you need to, you know, like a lot of times I go out at night and I do my astrolapses like in the middle of nowhere, and I'll just want my camera to be running wherever, and then I want to go to sleep, either in my car, my tent, or sleeping bag or something. So having the ability to let that run, regardless of what the phone's doing and if you're in range or not, is fantastic. The downside is that if you come back to it, you won't be able to see your progress anymore. So you have to remember like what time it was when you started and what time, how many minutes you set it for. That way you can have an idea. It'll stop on its own. It won't just keep shooting. It'll stop when it was programmed to. So the camera receives all that information about how long it's supposed to run and how many shots it's supposed to run for, and it'll stop after that. But you won't be able to see it. If you walk out of range with your phone and then come back into range, it won't show. There's no way to get it to show again. So just keep that in mind. That's one of the downfalls, but you know, it's a very minor deal for the fact that it keeps shooting and it does what it's supposed to, and that's very, very handy. Let's talk about battery life real quick. So this thing has a USB charging thing on the side, which is fantastic. I can charge it with any of my USB portable batteries. I can charge it any of my phone charger thingies. So that's fantastic. It takes a couple hours to charge, and it lasts, they say it lasts for a full 24 hours of shooting. And when you turn it on like that, it will blink. So it just blinked 3 times at me. I don't know how well you can see that, but it just blinked 3 times at me. And that means that it's 75%. So every blink is a quarter of its battery life. So if it blinks 4 times, it's at 100%. So that kind of gives you an estimate of what the battery life is. It would be kind of cool if it showed you in the app maybe like an exact percentage. Like if it could do that, that would be really nice. That way you could just double check and say, oh, well, if it blinks 2 times, it's at 50, but it could really be 60 or it could be 40, I don't know. Another thing is it has an on-off switch right here. I have forgotten many times to turn it off. So that's just something to like remind yourself about, is making sure that you turn it off when you're done. That way you don't get back home and then, you know, the next day you turn it on and you're out in the middle of nowhere and you have no pulse. That's happened to me once or twice. So definitely make sure you watch that on-off button. One of the things that I initially disliked about this a lot was that when it was released, it had a lot of bugs and firmware issues. But I will say Alpine Labs, those guys are on it like white on rice. Every time I emailed them and let them know what was going on, they were on it. And they had a ton of bug fixes and a ton of firmware and software updates, both for the actual device. You can update the firmware device in this thing, and you can update the firmware, the software on the app. And they had a lot of those rolled out within a few months period. And ever since then, I haven't had any problems since their last update in August with both the Bluetooth and the app. I've had 0. So if you do have any finicky issues when you first get this thing, depending on how long it's been sitting in the factory or wherever you got it from, it may need some updates, and make sure that it has the latest app update and the latest firmware update. And once you get it connected to the app, then you can do the firmware update and make sure that those are updated, and it should work smooth. Like I said, since August, I haven't had any issues with like 4 different cameras. So that's been really great. These guys are on the ball with their customer support. All right, so I want to wrap this up, and I want to finish off by saying, again, just reiterating, this thing is like one of my favorite camera accessories ever, especially for my cameras that don't have built-in intervalometers like my stupid 1DX2 here. And even with like the 5D Mark IV that I'm filming this with right now, even with that, even though that does have built-in intervalometer, like this thing, I still prefer to use it because it has much more control, and it's just a fantastic user experience. Aside from those initial issues that I had. Since then I haven't had any problems, so I really love using this thing. I want to get another thing that this can do. I want to get more of them so that I can hook them to multiple cameras and try that out, running them from the single app and do some multiple camera stuff. I do have a Spark on the way, and that's very similar to this, but rest assured when I get it I will do a full comparison video of the two, and I will let you know the differences and everything. But I will also do some more tutorials on time lapses in general, and in some of those more advanced tutorials with the time lapses I will be using this thing, and I will go over more in detail about the exact settings and everything else. So I hope this helps you, and if you don't have any intervalometers and you want to get into time lapsing and your camera, you want to take it to a next level and more than just a basic time lapse and HDR and all the good stuff that this offers, definitely go check out Alpine Labs and check this thing out. They have a couple of other smaller options as well. They have something called the Micron, then they have the Spark coming out, and then they have the Pulse. So they all do slightly different things, but this is like their top of the line, most advanced thing, and it has the most features, and I'm pretty sure it's like $100. So check that out, check them out. And if you like this stuff and you want to see more tutorials and more reviews like this and follow along with everything else that I'm doing, definitely make sure you go subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.